Once upon a time, in a small and peaceful town surrounded by golden fields and whispering winds, there lived a woman named Sarah Thompson. Her house stood at the very end of Maple Street, where every morning the sunlight touched her little garden first, and every evening the stars shone brightest above her roof. Sarah had everything a person could wish for: a loving husband, a modest home, and a heart filled with kindness. But inside her, there lived a quiet longing, a deep emptiness she could not fill with anything else, the longing for a child. Her husband, David, was a humble carpenter, gentle, hard-working, and deeply in love with his wife. Every morning, before leaving for work, he would place a kiss on her forehead and whisper, "One day, our time will come, Sarah. Don't lose hope." She always smiled back, even when her eyes carried tears that she tried to hide. For 10 long years they prayed. Every birthday, every Christmas, every silent night, Sarah would kneel beside her bed, close her eyes, and whisper, "Dear God, if there is even a small corner in your heaven where prayers wait to be answered, please remember mine. Bless us with a child." The doctors had given up. Neighbors had stopped asking. But faith lived in her heart like a candle that refused to go out. It was the end of November. The nights were growing longer, and the wind carried the scent of rain and cold earth. David was fixing a broken chair by the fire, when Sarah stood by the window watching raindrops trace paths down the glass. The world outside looked lonely. As the clock struck midnight, a faint sound broke through the silence, a soft cry. At first, Sarah thought it was the wind, but then it came again, a fragile wail barely audible through the storm. She opened the door, and there on her doorstep lay a small bundle wrapped in a thin white cloth. Inside, a baby girl, her cheeks red from the cold, her tiny fingers curling as if searching for warmth. Sarah froze. Her heart beat faster than it ever had before. "David!" she cried, her voice trembling. David rushed to the door, his hands still covered in sawdust. When he saw the child, his eyes widened. "Who could leave a baby out here?" he whispered, bending down. Sarah lifted the baby into her arms. The child stopped crying the moment she was held, as if she had found the place she belonged. She pressed her close and felt her warmth seep into her soul. In that instant, the years of tears and prayers and waiting melted away. David looked at Sarah, her eyes glistening, her lips trembling. He said softly, "Maybe this isn't just a coincidence, Sarah. Maybe this is a gift of God." And from that night, that's what the baby became. Their miracle, their blessing, their hope. A new beginning. Hope became the light of their home. The mornings now echoed with laughter, the scent of milk and baby powder filling the air. Sarah would hum lullabies as she cooked breakfast, and David often stopped working just to watch her little girl crawl around the living room, touching everything with curiosity. When Hope said her first word, "Mama," Sarah cried for hours. She held her baby tight and whispered, "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that." The whole neighborhood adored the Thompsons' little angel. People would say, "God finally smiled on them." Sarah would only smile and reply, for she knew it was true. But deep inside, a small worry always lived. Who left this baby on their doorstep, and why? Sometimes, late at night, she would look at Hope sleeping and wonder if someone out there missed her, if someone would ever come looking. But she pushed the thought away. This is God's will, she told herself. This child was meant for us. The years passed softly, like pages turning in a storybook. Hope was now 3 years old, full of laughter, endless energy, and curiosity that lit up every room she entered. She had big brown eyes, the color of fresh honey, and curls that bounced whenever she ran. Sarah loved to watch her play in the garden. She'd sit on the porch with a cup of tea, smiling as Hope chased butterflies or tried to talk to the flowers. David often said, "She has your heart, Sarah. She even talks to everything that can't talk back." One afternoon, Hope came running to Sarah with a crushed flower in her hand. "Mama, it was broken, but I made it better." Sarah looked down at the tiny, wilted flower, its stem awkwardly tied with a thread. She laughed through tears. "Oh, sweetheart, you fix everything you touch." And it was true. Ever since that rainy night, every pain in Sarah's heart had begun to heal. But love often attracts the eyes of fate. And fate, like the wind, sometimes changes direction when you least expect it. One morning, David came home early from work, holding a folded newspaper in his hand. His face looked troubled. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "There is something you should see," he said, handing her the paper. The headline read, "Young woman searching for lost baby, abandoned on a rainy night 3 years ago." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Her hands began to tremble as she read further. A woman named Emily Reed, who was forced by desperate circumstances to abandon her newborn outside a stranger's home, is now seeking forgiveness and hoping to find the child she left behind. Sarah stared at the words until they blurred with tears. She whispered, "Do you think?" David sighed deeply. "I don't know. There must be hundreds of stories like this." But in her heart, Sarah knew. The night, the rain, the age of the child, everything matched. She turned toward the small garden, where Hope was sitting under a tree, humming to herself. Her heart ached with fear. What if someone tries to take her away from me? David took her hand. "Sarah, let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe it's not her. And even if it is, we'll face it together." But deep inside, both of them knew that life, as peaceful as it had been, was about to change. A stranger at the door. A week passed. Sarah tried to act normal, but every knock on the door made her heart race. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold and purple, a woman came walking up the narrow path to their house. She was young, maybe in her 20s, with tired eyes and hands that looked like they'd known too much struggle. She stopped at the gate and called out softly, "Excuse me, is this the Thompson residence?" David came forward. "Yes. Can I help you?" The woman hesitated, then said, "My name is Emily Reed. I think you might have something that belongs to me." Sarah froze. Her heart pounded so loudly that she could barely hear her own breath. Then Emily took a step closer. "3 years ago, I left my baby, a girl, on a doorstep. It was a rainy night. I was desperate. I had no family, no home, no money. I thought she would die if I kept her, but I hoped, I prayed, someone would find her and love her." Tears filled her eyes. "I've spent every day since then trying to find her. Please, tell me, was it you who found her?" Sarah couldn't speak. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "Yes, that night we found her. She's our daughter now.
Emily began to cry, covering her face with her hands. "I knew it. I just wanted to see her once. Please, I don't want to take her away. I only want to see her face, to know she's alive, happy." Sarah looked at David. His eyes were filled with both fear and compassion. David said gently, "Let her see her." Sarah hesitated, but nodded slowly. She went inside, and moments later, Hope came running out with her little shoes half tied. When Emily saw her, she gasped and fell to her knees. "My baby," she whispered, tears pouring down her cheeks. Hope looked confused. "Mama, who is this lady?" Sarah's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. She knelt beside her daughter and whispered, "She's someone who loves you very much." Hope looked at Emily, then smiled, that pure, innocent smile that could heal any heart. Emily reached out and touched her cheek, her hand shaking. She whispered, "You're beautiful." Then, quietly, she stood up and said, "Thank you for giving her the life I couldn't." And just like that, she turned to leave. Sarah stood frozen as the woman disappeared into the setting sun. The weight of truth. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat by Hope's bed, watching her daughter breathe softly. Her mind replayed every word Emily had said. David came in quietly and sat beside her. "Is she gone?" she whispered. "Yes, but will she come back? What if she changes her mind?" David looked at Hope's peaceful face. "We'll cross that bridge if it comes. But Sarah, we both know, she's still her mother." Sarah's voice trembled. "And what am I then? What am I if not her mother?" David placed a hand over hers. "You're the one who raised her, loved her, held her when she was sick, taught her to walk. You're her mother too, the one God chose for her." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "But what if God takes her away?" David looked into her eyes and said softly, "Then he'll have to take me too." At that moment, Sarah realized that love wasn't about possession, it was about grace. She whispered a prayer that night, not for herself, but for Emily. "Dear God, wherever she is, bless her, let her find peace, and thank you for trusting me with this little soul, even if it's only for a while." The candle beside her flickered gently, as if heaven itself had nodded in answer.
Questions without answers. Time, as it always does, flowed like a gentle river, carrying with it laughter, tears, and unspoken truths. Hope was now 8 years old, curious and thoughtful, with the same soft eyes that once melted Sarah's heart on that stormy night. She loved stories, especially the ones her mother told her before bed. Sarah would weave tales about angels, faith, and miracles, but her favorite was always the story of the baby who came from heaven. One night, after Sarah finished telling the story, Hope asked quietly, "Mama, was I that baby?" The question struck Sarah like a cold wind. She froze, her heart beating fast. "What makes you think that, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice trembling. She shrugged. "Because every time you tell it, you cry at the end." Sarah smiled faintly, trying to hold her tears back. "Yes," she whispered, brushing her hair. "You are that baby, my little miracle." Hope smiled, satisfied, and turned over to sleep. But Sarah sat beside her for a long time, staring at the ceiling.
The truth she had buried deep inside for years was growing heavier. One day, Hope would have to know, and when that day came, would she still call her Mama?
The return of Emily. 10 years had passed since that night of rain. Hope was now 13, tall, graceful, and full of dreams. She loved painting and helping others. Often, she would visit the local orphanage, saying, "Every child deserves to feel loved, just like I do." Sarah watched her grow with pride. But something in her heart still trembled, the fear that the past was not done with them yet. And she was right. One evening, as the sky turned crimson, a letter arrived. The handwriting was familiar, though faint with age. Sarah opened it slowly. "Dear Mrs. Thompson, I hope you remember me. My name is Emily Reed. I never forgot what you did for me, for her. I've rebuilt my life. I'm married now, settled, and at peace. But there's one piece of my heart I've never found. My daughter. I don't wish to cause pain. I only wish to meet her, to know if she's truly happy. Please don't refuse me this chance. I owe her the truth. With gratitude and love, Emily Reed." Sarah read it 3 times. Her hands trembled. The letter fell onto the table as she whispered, "It's happening again." That night she showed it to David. He read it silently and sighed. "She's not asking to take her. She just wants to see her." "But what if Hope starts asking questions?" Sarah said. "What if she realizes who Emily is?" David placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Then maybe it's time she knew the truth." Sarah looked away. "She's still a child." David shook his head gently. "She's not a child anymore, Sarah. She deserves honesty." The next morning, Sarah agreed to meet Emily. They met at a quiet cafe by the edge of town, the same town where their fates had once crossed years ago. When Sarah saw Emily, her eyes filled with tears. She had aged, yes, but her face carried peace, the kind that comes only after forgiveness. Emily spoke softly. "I never stopped thinking about her. Every birthday, I whispered her name in my prayers. You gave her everything I couldn't." Sarah looked down, her voice breaking. "She's my life, Emily. She doesn't know the truth yet. I was afraid to lose her." Emily reached across the table and held her hand. "You'll never lose her. You're her mother in every way that matters. I only want to tell her that she was loved before she was even born." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "If we do this, we do it gently. She's sensitive." Emily nodded. "I promise." The truth unfolds. A few days later, Sarah decided to tell Hope everything. The sky outside was quiet, the sun soft and golden. Hope was sitting by the window, painting a picture of a little girl standing in the rain, a girl wrapped in a white blanket. Sarah's heart stopped when she saw it. "Hope," she said softly, sitting beside her, "why did you paint this?" Hope looked at the canvas. "I don't know. It just came to me. It feels like a memory." Sarah's hands trembled. She took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you, sweetheart." Hope turned to her, curious. "Do you remember how I always said you were a gift from God?" Hope nodded. Sarah swallowed hard. "You truly were, but you weren't born to me. One night, a long time ago, I found you on our doorstep. You were just a baby. Someone left you there, and I took you in. You became mine." Hope's eyes widened. "You mean I was abandoned?"
No, no, darling, Sarah said quickly, tears streaming down her face. You were given to me by God. I prayed for you for years, and He sent you. That's how I see it, a divine gift. Hope sat quietly for a moment. Then she whispered, "Who was my real mother?" Sarah hesitated, then said softly, "Her name is Emily. She's alive, and she wants to see you." Hope stared at her, shock, confusion, and curiosity, all mixed in her young eyes. "Does she love me?" she asked finally. Sarah smiled through tears. "Yes, sweetheart, she always did. She just couldn't take care of you then, but she never stopped loving you." Hope leaned against her, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to feel, Mama." Sarah held her close. "You don't need to decide now. Just know this, no matter what happens, you'll always be my daughter. Always." Hope closed her eyes, whispering, "You'll always be my mother, too." At that moment, Sarah felt something inside her heal, something that had been aching for years. Maybe this was what God wanted all along, not to divide love, but to share it.
The meeting. The day came softly, like a whisper in the wind. The sky was a gentle blue, and sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting golden lines across the floor. Hope stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair nervously. Her hands shook slightly, though she tried to hide it. Sarah watched her from the doorway, her heart aching. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Hope nodded, though her voice trembled. "I think so. What if she doesn't like me?" Sarah smiled faintly. "She will. You're everything any mother could ever hope for." Hope looked at her mother, then suddenly hugged her tightly. "Don't let go of me, Mama." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Never, my love. Never." The meeting was arranged at the same cafe where Sarah and Emily had spoken days before. When they arrived, Emily was already there, sitting by the window, holding a small bunch of white daisies. When she saw them, she stood up quickly, her eyes glistening with tears locked onto Hope's face. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air felt heavy, as though time itself had stopped. Then Hope, in a trembling voice, said, "You're Emily." Emily nodded, unable to speak. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm Emily." Hope looked down, twisting her fingers. "You're my real mother?" Emily's voice broke. "Yes, but the truth is, you've already had a real mother all along." She looked at Sarah, her eyes full of gratitude. "The kind of mother I prayed you would find." Sarah's eyes welled up too. She reached out and placed her hand on Emily's.
For a moment, there were no words, only tears. Emily finally whispered, "You have no idea how sorry I am, Hope. I was young, scared, alone, but I never stopped thinking about you. Every night I prayed you were warm, safe, and loved. And seeing you now, I know my prayer was answered." Hope's voice was quiet. "I used to wonder where I came from. Sometimes I'd dream about someone singing to me, a voice I didn't know." Emily smiled sadly. "That was me. I used to sing to you when you were a baby." Hope's eyes filled with tears. "I think I remember." Sarah sat silently, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. Emily reached out slowly, touching Hope's hand. "I don't expect you to love me right away. I just want to be a part of your life, even if it's a small part." Hope looked at both women. one who gave her life, one who gave her love. She took a deep breath and said softly, "Maybe I can love both." And at that moment, something sacred happened, not the loss of a child or the gain of one, but the birth of understanding.
David held her close. She's not leaving, Sarah. She's just growing, and love is growing with her. You taught her that. Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. It still hurts, though. David kissed her forehead. All great love hurts a little. That's how you know it's real. The storm returned. Just as life began to find a fragile balance, a storm returned, this time not in the sky, but in their hearts. Emily fell ill. What began as a faint cough turned into something worse, a deep, painful sickness that doctors struggled to control. When Hope found out, she was devastated. "Mama, we have to help her," she cried. Sarah looked into her daughter's desperate eyes and said softly, "Of course we will. She's part of our family now." For weeks, they took turns visiting Emily at the hospital. Sarah cooked soup. Hope read to her every evening. David built a small wooden cross for her bedside, a reminder, he said, that faith never leaves us. One night, as Hope sat by Emily's bedside, Emily whispered weakly, "I prayed to see you grow up, and now I have. I can go peacefully." "Don't say that," Hope cried, clutching her hand. "You're not going anywhere." Emily smiled faintly. "Sweetheart, promise me you'll keep both your mothers close, in your heart. That's all I want." Hope nodded through tears. "I promise." Sarah stood silently in the doorway, watching the two of them. She realized then that God's plan had always been far bigger than her pain. It had brought three souls together to teach them what love truly meant. The next morning, Emily slipped away quietly, her hand still holding the daisies Hope had brought her the day before. She left behind a letter addressed to both Sarah and Hope. The stranger at the door. It was a calm summer evening. The air smelled of freshly cut grass, and the golden light of the setting sun painted the walls of the Thompson home in soft warmth. Sarah was watering her garden, while Hope, now 11 years old, played with her sketchbook under the apple tree. "Mom, can I draw you?" Sarah laughed. "Only if you make me look younger." Hope grinned. "You already look perfect." That single line filled Sarah's heart with such joy that she didn't notice the tall figure standing quietly at the gate.
A man, perhaps in his late 30s, worn out by travel, with tired eyes, was watching them. When Sarah looked up, her watering can slipped from her hand. "Can I help you?" she asked, wiping her palms on her apron. The man hesitated, his voice heavy. I'm sorry to disturb you. My name is Michael Turner. I'm looking for someone." Sarah frowned. "Who are you looking for?" He looked down, struggling to find words. "A little girl. She would be about 11 now. She was left at a doorstep one rainy night." Sarah froze. Every heartbeat sounded louder than the wind. Hope looked up from her drawing, curious. "Mom, who is he?" Sarah's voice shook. "No one, sweetheart. Go inside, please." But even as Hope ran inside, Sarah knew her world had just begun to tremble. The truth between two hearts. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The words, "a little girl,"
left on a doorstep, kept echoing in her mind. She sat by Hope's bedside, watching her sleep peacefully. David, standing at the door, whispered, "Who was that man?" Sarah turned toward him, tears in her eyes. "He said he's looking for his daughter, David. The same night. The same rain. Everything matches. What if?" David walked in and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sarah, we don't know anything for sure. Don't let fear take what's ours. But what if God only lent her to us?" She whispered brokenly. David sighed. "Then we'll thank him for every moment we were given." The next morning, Sarah met Michael again at the park. He looked thinner, his face drawn by years of regret. "I lost my wife in an accident that same night. She was on her way to the hospital with our baby. She never made it. Someone told me a child was found nearby, but I was unconscious for weeks. When I woke, my daughter was gone." Sarah's hands trembled. She wanted to tell him everything: the doorstep, the blanket, the note she had hidden away all these years, but fear clutched her heart. "Do you have any proof?" He nodded. "Only this." He showed a small silver bracelet, engraved with a name: Hope. Sarah felt her knees weaken. It was the same bracelet she had found around the baby's wrist. The one she had kept locked away in a small wooden box under her bed. For years, she had believed it to be a simple trinket, but now it carried a truth that could tear her life apart.
Between heaven and heart. Days passed in silence. Sarah moved through her home like a ghost, cooking, cleaning, smiling, but not really there. Every glance at Hope felt heavier now, filled with love and fear tangled together. David finally said one night, "Sarah, you can't hide the truth forever. We have to do what's right." Tears streamed down her face. What if doing right breaks her heart? What if she stops calling me Mom? David held her tightly. "You didn't just take her in, Sarah. You raised her. You loved her like no one else could. No truth can erase that." Later that night, Sarah opened the old wooden box. Inside lay the silver bracelet and a damp, half-torn note written in fading ink. "If you find her, please protect her. She is our gift from God." She ran her fingers over the words and whispered to herself, "Then maybe God didn't just give her to me. Maybe He sent her through me." The next morning she took Hope's hand and said, "Sweetheart, we need to talk about something important." Hope looked confused but nodded. "What is it, Mom?" Her lips trembled as she spoke. "There's a man who says he might be your father." Hope blinked, speechless. The world around her seemed to pause. Even the ticking clock fell silent. Sarah held her close. "No matter what happens, you will always be my daughter. Always." Hope didn't cry. She just whispered softly, "You're my mom. God chose you for me. Isn't that enough?" Sarah broke down, hugging her tightly. "Yes, my love, that's more than enough." The crossroads of love. In the days that followed, Michael visited often. He brought Hope books, stories of her late mother, and pictures from a past she never knew she had. Hope listened carefully, her young heart torn between two worlds, one of blood and one of love.
Sometimes she'd sit with Sarah on the porch and ask, "Mom, why did God give me two families?" Sarah smiled through her tears. "Maybe because he wanted you to be loved twice as much." But as time went on, the questions grew deeper. "Will I have to go live with him?" Sarah never knew how to answer. David said one evening, "Maybe it's time we think about what's best for her." Sarah turned sharply. "What's best for her is here, with us." "I know," he replied gently, "but sometimes love isn't about holding on, it's about letting go." That night, Sarah wept quietly, her hands clutching the note she had found with Hope years ago. "She is our gift from God." Those words echoed in her soul. Maybe this was what the message had meant, that hope didn't belong to one person, but to all the love that had saved her. The next morning, she called Michael. "Can we talk?" They met at the same park bench where he had first arrived. Sarah's voice shook. "I don't want to lose her, but I know she deserves to know you. She deserves both her worlds." Michael nodded, his eyes soft. "You're not losing her, Sarah. You're the reason she's alive, the reason she smiles. I could never take that away." Tears filled her eyes as he continued, "You're her mother too, the kind of mother my wife would have prayed for." For the first time, Sarah felt peace instead of fear. The gift's purpose. Months passed. Hope's laughter once again filled the Thompson house. Now she spent weekends with Michael, learning about her mother, exploring memories of a life she never knew she had. But she always came back home running into Sarah's arms, saying, "Mom, I missed your pancakes." Sarah would smile and kiss her forehead, "And I missed your mess." It was a strange kind of family now, a circle built not by blood alone, but by grace, forgiveness, and faith. One Sunday morning, the three adults sat together at the church pew while Hope sang in the children's choir. Her voice was light and clear, rising like sunlight breaking through clouds. As they listened, Sarah's tears shimmered. David took her hand, and Michael whispered softly, "Now I understand. She really is a gift from God, to both of us." Sarah nodded. Yes, she was never meant to belong to just one heart. God gave her to heal all of ours. When the choir ended, Hope ran toward them, her face glowing. "Did you hear me, Mom? Did you hear me, Dad?" Both answered at the same time, "Yes, sweetheart." Hope laughed, and in that laughter lived everything God had ever wanted for them. Love beyond reason, beyond fear, beyond the boundaries of life itself. And from that day forward, the Thompsons and the Turners became one family, bound not by the past, but by the miracle that faith had written into their lives.
The passing years. Time, as always, flowed gently yet swiftly, like a river that never looks back. Hope grew from a curious child into a graceful young woman. Her eyes, still bright and searching, carried both Sarah's warmth and Michael's quiet strength. By the time she turned 18, she was already known across town for her compassion. She volunteered at the community center, helped children with their studies, and spent weekends at the local orphanage. "Why do you spend so much time there, Hope?" Sarah once asked as they folded laundry together. Hope smiled softly. "Because I was once one of them, even if I didn't grow up there. Someone opened their heart and home for me. Maybe it's my turn to do the same for someone else." Sarah paused, her heart swelling with pride. "You're more like me than you think." Hope giggled, "Or maybe you're more like me." They laughed together, the sound of years of love that no storm could ever take away. Meanwhile, Michael often joined them for Sunday dinners. What once began as awkward visits had now become warm family evenings filled with stories, laughter, and forgiveness. David, too, had softened toward Michael. "God knows what he's doing," he once said quietly, watching Hope smile between them. "She was never ours to keep. She was ours to raise." The letter of destiny. One morning, Hope came across an old wooden box in Sarah's closet, the same box that had held the note and bracelet all those years ago. "Mom, what's this?" She froze for a moment, memories flooding back like waves on a quiet shore. She walked over and opened the box with trembling hands. Inside lay the tiny silver bracelet and the faded note, the one written by her birth mother. Hope picked it up and read the words aloud. "If you find her, please protect her. She is our gift from God." Her voice trembled. "This was for me?" Sarah nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. That night, when we found you, this was lying beside you. I kept it all these years because it reminded me that even when life feels lost, God still writes miracles." Hope pressed the note to her heart. "I want to keep it, Mom, not as a reminder of what I lost, but of what I found." Later that night, Hope sat by her window, the moonlight falling on the letter. She whispered, "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for letting me go so I could find them. And thank you, God, for finding me twice." Something inside her changed that night, a quiet realization that her story wasn't just about being loved, it was about spreading that love.
The purpose unfolds. Years passed again. Hope went on to study social work and opened a foundation called the Gift of God Home, a shelter for abandoned children and single mothers who had nowhere else to go. The small town that once whispered stories of sorrow now echoed with hope, her name fittingly reflected in every smile she brought. Sarah, older now, often visited the center. She would sit by the children, reading them stories of courage, faith, and miracles. Sometimes when the kids asked her, "Grandma, where did you get your name?" she'd laugh and say, "I didn't. It was given to me by the little girl who gave me everything." Michael became one of the main supporters of the center. David helped design the furniture for the children's rooms. Together, they built not just a building, but a living, breathing symbol of love that crossed pain, distance, and time. One afternoon, at the grand opening of the new wing of the foundation, Hope stood at the podium. Her voice carried calm strength as she said, "This home is for every child who thinks they were forgotten. I am living proof that God never forgets. Sometimes His gifts don't come wrapped in ribbons, they come wrapped in tears, in faith, and in time." The audience stood in silence, some with tears, some with smiles, as Hope ended her speech with words that echoed through every heart. "My life began the day someone opened a door during a storm. That's when I learned God's gifts don't always come when we expect them, but always when we need them." Sarah sat in the front row, her hands trembling with pride. Beside her, David whispered, "She's doing what she was meant to do." And Sarah, smiling through tears, replied, "She is the miracle we prayed for." Storm over the foundation. It was the beginning of winter when the first cracks appeared, not in the walls of Hope's foundation, but in the peace it stood upon. One morning, Hope received a letter from the city council. Her hands trembled as she read. Due to zoning and funding issues, the Gift of God home may face temporary closure until compliance reviews are completed. Her heart sank. That building wasn't just a shelter. It was a heartbeat, a second chance for dozens of children. Sarah and David were at the kitchen table when she told them. "They can't do this," Hope said, her voice trembling. "What about the children, the mothers?" David placed a calming hand on her shoulder. "We'll find a way. We always do." But days turned into weeks, and the problem only grew. Donations slowed, inspections tightened, and rumors began to spread that the foundation might not survive. One night, Hope walked through the empty hallways, listening to the quiet breaths of sleeping children. She knelt near one of the small beds, whispering, "God, you gave me this purpose. Please don't take it away now." Tears rolled down her cheeks, falling onto the wooden floor, the same way Sarah once cried by her cradle years ago.
The Battle of Faith. Hope spent days visiting offices, signing petitions, and meeting sponsors. Some doors closed in her face, others offered hollow promises. But she refused to give up. Sarah often waited by the window, praying silently, as she used to years ago when Hope was still a little girl. "Lord," she whispered, "she's stronger than I ever was, but even strength needs your light." One evening, after another failed meeting, Hope returned home exhausted. Michael was there, waiting. "I heard about the council's decision," he said. "I know someone on the board. Let me help." Hope shook her head gently. "Dad, I appreciate it, but I can't take shortcuts. This place was built on faith. I won't lose that." Michael smiled proudly. "You really are your mother's daughter, and Sarah's too." The next day, she held a small meeting at the town church. Dozens of people came, volunteers, children who had once lived at the foundation, parents and strangers who had been touched by her kindness. Standing at the pulpit, she said, "This home isn't just mine, it's ours. It's a promise that no child should ever be left alone in the rain. If we all stand together, no one can shut that promise down." The crowd erupted in applause. Tears rolled down faces. That night, donations flooded in, and news spread across the town. Hope Thompson was fighting for the children again. It wasn't easy, but within weeks, the foundation was safe once more. The city council reversed its decision after public support poured in from every corner. When Hope received the official letter confirming the reopening, she rushed to Sarah, holding it high. "Mom, it's saved! We did it!" Sarah hugged her tightly, whispering through tears, "No, sweetheart, you did it. You saved more than a home. You saved hope itself." A circle completed. Spring arrived, and with it came the anniversary of the foundation's opening, 10 beautiful years of miracles. The courtyard was decorated with ribbons, lights, and laughter. Children danced around, mothers smiled, and music filled the air. Sarah, now with silver strands in her hair, sat beneath a blooming cherry tree. David stood beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "Do you remember," he said softly, "that stormy night years ago?" Sarah smiled faintly. "How could I ever forget? That was the night God gave us everything." As they spoke, Hope took the stage to thank everyone. Her voice carried through the air, filled with the same warmth,
that once filled her mother's prayers. 10 years ago, this was only a dream, built on faith, love, and one miracle. I stand here not as someone who was abandoned, but as someone who was found, again and again, by my mother, by my father, and by God. She paused, looking toward Sarah, her eyes glistening. My story began with a storm, but every storm ends with light. And sometimes that light doesn't come from the sky. It comes from the hearts that never give up. The crowd stood in silent awe. Some clapped, others wiped their tears. Sarah felt something deep within her, not sadness, not pride, but pure gratitude. As Hope stepped down, she embraced her mother tightly. "Mom," she whispered, "you were right all along. God doesn't forget prayers. He just answers them in His time." Sarah kissed her forehead. "Yes, my darling, you were my answered prayer, my gift from God." The music swelled, laughter rose, and the night sky filled with stars. It was as if heaven itself was smiling, watching the miracle it had written come full circle.
The reunion. As the warm light of dawn spread across the sleepy village, Anna felt a strange calm in her heart. She stepped outside her small cottage, barefoot, feeling the dew under her feet. The air smelled of earth and hope, the kind that promised a new beginning. For days she had prayed for peace, for strength, for her son Jacob's safety. Life had tested her, taken from her, and yet, somehow, always left her with a flicker of faith that one day she would understand why God had chosen this path for her. The sound of footsteps broke her thoughts, slow, familiar. Her heart raced as she turned around. And there he was. Jacob, grown, taller, his face marked with stories of pain and survival. For a moment, the world stopped. Anna couldn't breathe. Then, with trembling hands, she ran toward him. "Jacob," she whispered, her voice breaking. He dropped his bag and fell into her arms. Tears streamed down both their faces. Tears of loss, of gratitude, of everything that words could never express. "I thought I lost you forever," she sobbed. Jacob smiled faintly through his tears. "You never did, Mama. You prayed me back." The village children who were playing nearby stopped and stared. The old baker who had once told Anna to never lose hope came out of his shop, wiping his eyes. People gathered, silently witnessing the miracle. Jacob told her his story, how he had been trapped far from home after the flood, rescued by a kind farmer who took him in, how he worked hard to survive, and how one day he remembered his mother's words. God's gifts never leave you. They just find their way back when you're ready. Anna listened, holding his hand tightly, never letting go. That night they sat together outside under the stars. Jacob placed something in her lap, a small wooden cross he had made when he thought he'd never see her again. But I realized something. No matter where I was, your prayers were with me. That was my gift from God. Anna smiled through her tears. And you, my son, are mine. The night grew quiet. The wind moved softly through the trees, almost like a whisper that carried peace, forgiveness, and the gentle truth that every trial hides a blessing. Anna looked up at the sky, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. She realized that a gift of God wasn't just her son,
It was faith itself, the power that kept her heart alive when the world went dark.